everybody. Welcome to Let's Fix Stuff's Meet the Rocket Scientist podcast. In our Meet the Rocket Scientist podcast, we introduce you to subject matter experts on topics that really matter in life. These topics may have nothing to do with rocket science whatsoever, but as an aerospace engineer who has earned the moniker rocket scientist for my work on aerospace programs such as the International Space Station, I believe it's not right to only allow the term rocket scientist to be used for aerospace engineers. In my book, anybody who boldly goes where no one has gone before and pushes the limits of knowledge in their particular field should be granted the opportunity to be known as a rocket scientist. It's with this understanding in hand that I am honored to introduce today's honorary rocket scientist, Frank Clegg, former president of Microsoft Canada and currently the CEO of Canadians for Safe Technology. And he's also on the business advisory group for the Environmental Health Trust Fund in America. What's Frank's specialty? Well, wireless technology. Specifically, what are the risks inherent in wireless technology, in particular with the new 5G networks? I first met Frank at an international forum that I hosted in Lansing, Michigan in December of 2018. The goal of that forum was to provide legislators with a comprehensive overview of the benefits and risks of wireless technology in general, and 5G specifically. Since then, Frank has been on the forefront of those seeking to improve awareness of the risks associated with 5G wireless technology. Frank, it's my honor to really, truly welcome you to Meet the Rocket Scientist.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the honorary title. I really appreciate that.
No, it's good. Well, you've earned it, and I've listened to you speak so many times, and you have just such a practical, common sense approach to what's going on here, and I know both you and I are inspired to go off and talk on this subject because we have family members that are directly impacted by this, but the impacts go well beyond the impacts to our family members. And I was wondering if you could kind of just highlight, well, why do we even, well, first of all, what is 5G technology? And then maybe go into a little bit, what are the risks and what are the things we should be concerned with?
Certainly. 5G is the next generation. So whereas 3G, 4G, the G stands for generation, not to be confused with gigahertz or any of the other specific technical details. So the fifth generation is really just the next generation of technology. And what's particularly concerning about it are a couple of things. First off, that we're expanding beyond the normal spectrum. So all the concerns that we have about cancer risk and reproductive harm and learning disabilities that we have with 2, 3, and 4G also apply to the fifth generation 5G. But we're also expanding into something called millimeter waves for the first time. And these are some of the applications of that when you're in the airport scanning systems are fifth generation. It's in that millimeter wave spectrum that we're using. The difference is that in the airport, you go in and you get scanned for like about fractions of a second.
Yep. Whereas
a small cell antenna that uses 5G technology could be meters from your bedroom window, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you could have multiple providers actually beaming into that 5G technology. So there is the new spectrum that we really don't know anything about.
And it's 24 to 90 gigahertz type spectrum, roughly.
Yeah, it's in the like 60 millimeter waves, up in that range, 60, 70 millimeter waves, actually. So it's really up above the normal spectrum of any of the technology. Secondly, there's been no testing that we can find or we're aware of around the world to show the long-term effects of fifth generation 5G technology.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, Senator Blumenthal, somebody that I'm not always on the same page with, I remember in a Senate committee, he actually asked the industry who was out there testifying before his committee, goes, please show us the tests associated with 5G technology, proving it's safe. And the industry said point blank, there isn't any.
Exactly. And that I think was a year and a bit ago, and there's been nothing published. In fact, there's a lot of studies now coming out and saying, we don't know enough, we need to study this more. And unfortunately, the tack that we're taking, and we take in North America, whether it's the FCC or Health Canada, is to say, well, let's roll that out there and see what happens and see, as opposed to testing and proving it's safe, the way we do for the automotive industry or the pharmaceutical or the chemical industry. So we're asking for an about face to say, look, we are now, this technology is so pervasive that we need to actually understand it and test it before we actually send it out. The third concern from a technology standpoint about 5G is because so the good news is that think of it as the pipe of data that can come from 5G is a lot bigger. Yeah. So you can have a lot more information, and everybody's aware there's better download speeds and better response time and all those sorts of things, which are necessary. But the trade-off is that you have to be a lot closer to the source of the information or the source of the data.
Yeah.
We're seeing models, Patrick, that show that in dense populated areas, whether it's in a business community or a residential community, we could need a small cell antenna as close as every 100 meters or every 110 yards.
Yeah.
Right. So you combine.
And just to put that in context for everybody, right now with the cell phone network, it's maybe 1 to 2 miles that you'd see a cell tower. And now all of a sudden, we've already documented that there are adverse health impacts. I mean, there's carcinogenic, i.e. cancer causing effects from cell towers that have been proven in very solid studies. I mean, the FDA study that came out a while back with, it had been out there, demonstrated the cell phones themselves cause cancer, but also the cell towers actually cause cancer. So even if you're not carrying around a 5G phone, you're at risk.
Yes, absolutely. And as I said before, that the fact that it's this 24-hour a day, 7-day a week. Like if you own a cell phone, you can make the decision to hold it away from your head. Yeah. You can hold it away, not put it in your pants pocket, or not put it in your jacket pocket, or not put it in your bra. But if you have a small cell antenna that's 4G or 5G technology, 100 yards away from your house, or 100 meters away from your house, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have actually no say in that. And the way that the FCC and Health Canada guidelines are now, and Industry Canada guidelines, is that tower can be placed within 20 to 30 meters of your child's bedroom or your bedroom, and you really don't have a lot to say about it. So that's the concern. So it's proximity and also the duration and this new set of waves that we really don't understand at all.
Now, before we go further, I just want to put an anchor the point around these adverse health impact risks that we're talking about. I mean, these are not risks of saying loss of attention or anything. These are serious health impacts. I mean, they're talking about, there's studies that have been demonstrated with other forms of wireless radiation, in particular, that it interrupts basic cell replication and impacts the structure of your DNA. Yes. So this is, and it leads to cancer, among other things. I mean, these are, we're not supposed to be, everybody made a big deal out of asbestos, and they made a big deal out of saccharin for a sugar substitute and all this kind of stuff. But here we got another case where the precursors to 5G technology have already been demonstrated to have serious adverse health impacts. And so when we say that there is no study saying that it's safe for people to go off and deploy this, it's not just a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T and making sure that you do the paper chase to make sure you've got all the approvals done from a bureaucracy. No, it's because we're genuinely concerned about the safety and well-being of people who come in contact with, particularly with children. And the younger you are, the more susceptible, because you got a lot more of that DNA replication going on than us older folks.
Well, Patrick, actually, absolutely, to build on what you're saying too, that there are studies now, we've done some modeling with the Environmental Health Trust with organizations around the world, where we're showing that the penetration of a cell phone, if you hold it to your head, in an adult would be in the 10 to 20% range, whereas in a child in, say, 5 years of age, it goes to 70% of their brain. And we know that children's heads, brains are have a lot more water. So not only does the radiation get into the skull, penetrate the skull more, it actually stays inside the head or inside the skull for longer periods of time. You mentioned cancer. The International Agency for the Research of Cancer, part of the World Health Organization, did their analysis back in 2011, and they came out with a categorization of 2B, which means it's a possible human carcinogen. Yeah. There are peer-reviewed papers now published by experts internationally and in North America that say if IARC was to review the data today, look at the National Toxicology Program, the $30 million study funded by the National Institute of Health, to look at the epidemiological research, to look at the DNA research, their papers, published papers say that IARC would come out with a category 1, which is in the same category as asbestos and tobacco smoke. So IARC has now said they will review the science. The science is now there and they're going to review it. And they've committed in the next 3 to 5 years to actually bring in the international scientific body and do this research. But as you and I both know, our problem is in North America, our track record is horrible. It took decades in cigarette smoke, asbestos, urea formaldehyde, thalidomide, all these things that are now we know are carcinogenic. And all our efforts to try to accelerate that process to say, let's not wait another 10 or 20, 30 years before we declare some of these substances harmful.
Instead, they're accelerating the deployment of the technology, and which is frightening in this context. Now, you know, when I was still senator, I remember handing a white paper over to Ajit Pai, who was the FCC chair, and I said, "Listen, this is a balanced approach. It was jointly authored by myself, who my background's in aerospace engineering, very technical. I did cabling design on the space station, where I had to worry about EMI considerations in the design of the equipment. My wife's a pediatrician, and she studied epidemiology at the University of Michigan. So not slouches on, you know, understanding the science associated with this. And we handed him the white paper. And the day after we handed him the white paper, we saw no action at all. We didn't see any action going forward. If anything, we saw them accelerating their deployment. And that's been the concern. So I guess the next thing is what's currently happening today, and what should we be? Because we already highlighted some of the risks. And by the way, we focus on the adverse health impacts. I want to highlight a couple other risks too that we addressed at that forum back in 2018. One is privacy, right? Because a lot of that data, how many people just click on accept when it comes to all the nice little authorizations that you're prompted for when you get your new cell phone or computer on your computer? When you go to a different website, you just click accept, accept, accept. Well, you're signing away a lot of data and a lot of information about you, and a lot of tracking is being done on you that has serious Fourth Amendment concerns here in the U.S., which is your right to privacy. And it's not there have been court cases where they've actually used data from smart meter technology, which is similar to what we're talking about here, in court cases without the approval or authorization, without even a subpoena to get that information. And there's another key risk area too that I think we need to address. So in addition to adverse health impacts, in addition to privacy concerns, there's a national security risk associated with this, because a lot of the components around 5G, we've gotten a little bit of media attention around Huawei, a Chinese company, which has demonstrated that they're not always in the best interests of America or Canada or anybody that is not in the Chinese Communist Party. And they have been implicated in some nefarious schemes around that. So, and that's the one area of hope, I think, from an advocacy perspective, because I think the Trump administration in particular has recognized that facet of the risk. Yes. And so he hasn't quite gotten on to the other two yet, but that facet he understands. And I think we can leverage that to go off and broaden the awareness around what exactly are we doing here with this 5G. So I guess against that backdrop, what's currently happening today, and where's some kind of signs for hope on the horizon, if you will?
I guess let me answer the second question first. I think it's worth making the distinction, Senator, that it's the wireless part of the 5G that's very concerning. That's what emits the radiation. So whenever there's a fiber installation, we know that fiber is up to 100 times faster. Yeah. It does not emit the radiation. It's a lot safer, a lot less hack, more secure. So the thing that's encouraging is I think people are starting to understand that there's an alternative. And there's a good position paper written by Dr. Shockley at the University of Colorado, where he really just goes right after the whole business case around wireless technology. He talks about you have to replace the whole infrastructure from when you go from 2G to 3G. Yeah. You have to replace it again. And a lot of the towers and everything from 3G to 4G. Whereas you've got the fiber cable, and it costs more initially up front to do that, but it can last for decades. Yeah. And so the cost of it, so it's less, it's more resilient, it's more reliable.
So you're highlighting a key point here, and that is we're not saying get rid of technology. I mean, look at this backdrop here. I like technology, right? I love anything advanced. I know you with Microsoft, I mean, it's all about technology. I mean, that's an interest, it's a passion of ours. We're not saying do away with the idea of information technology. We're just saying, guys, just like cars have to have some safety considerations put into them when you design them, we're saying the same type of considerations need to be put into the design of these systems because they are so pervasive.
Yes. So I think what people can do is that there's really two things to focus on. The first thing is to really understand how to protect yourselves and your environment and your family. And there's two aspects, and Patrick, you know all about this. The first aspect is to make sure you understand the distance is your friend. The amount of radiation emission goes down inversely with the square. So in other words, if you double the distance of the phone from your head, the radiation goes down 4 times.
Yeah.
If you triple it, it goes down 9 times. So distances, so any device that is a wireless device that's emitting radiation, keep it away from yourself as far as you possibly can.
And to drive that home, what does it say in the legal agreements for the phone that you have, right?
Absolutely.
I encourage everybody to go into their iPhone or your Android phone and look at the legal agreement. It talks about the risks we're talking about. And when they go off and they specifically say, I think in most of the agreements that I've seen, that you're not supposed to hold it up to your ear in the first place, but that's exactly what everybody does.
Well, what they have in order to get approved, in the manual, they will say, and nobody goes through the 5 layers of the phone or page 162 in the manual. It says you have to keep the phone X distance from your body to meet federal guidelines. So they're already saying to you, don't put it against your head because we break the guidelines. So understand that, keep it away. The second thing is to keep your residence, where you sleep, where you spend the majority of your downtime, keep that as free from technology and wireless radiation as you can. So get the cell phone out of the bedroom, get rid of the deck portable phone. If you have smart meters or smart TVs, get rid of them. Wireless mice and keyboards. They all have wired alternatives that you can use. So if you have to use a Wi-Fi, in some cases you can't run an Ethernet cable throughout the house. Well, then go to your local Home Depot and buy a timer you use for your holiday lights and have the router on a timer so it goes off. So when you're sleeping, because our bodies, especially mentioned children are little healing machines.
Yeah.
And if they have several hours of radiation-free environment, their bodies can overcome a lot of the radiation that we're exposed to in the everyday world. So distance is your friend, and create a safe haven where you sleep are really the two big issues. And
there's guidelines, there's websites up like ehtrust.org and Canadians for Safe Technology, which is c4st.org, that people can go for a list of these. I know I've listened to Cece Doucette do a great explanation of these. We've got up on one of my YouTube channels, she's got a great presentation on it. And now Theodora Escarada also has a great summary of what we can do on that. So there are some real heroes out there outlining all this very systematically for everybody. So you don't have the excuse that there's nothing we can do. There is a lot that you can do.
And then I think the third step of that is to really reach out to your local politician. In Canada, it would be our federal member of parliament. In the US, it's the legislative assembly member, your senator, people who have a vote, who have a voice, who are concerned about representing representing their constituents. And we have a lot of members that tell us, say, look, I'm just not hearing about it from my constituents. So you have to. So we launched an appeal, the 5G appeal here in Canada. And one of the things we do, when you sign the appeal and you tick off a box, there's a notice that goes to your local member of parliament saying, I've signed this appeal. I would like you to put this on your radar screen. And so, a simple letter, an email, stop in and see them and just say, look, you don't have to be an expert on this technology to say, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You mentioned our 2 websites. EH Trust is very, very current on 5G. Internationally, what's going on around the world, we're starting to see countries that are halting or slowing down. There's states in the US that are formally investigating this, that are putting some hold on it. On some of the work that's being done in 5G. So, get on these 2 websites. c4st.org talks about the appeal. If you're a Canadian, we'd love you to sign it. But, as you said, Patrick, get educated, get informed, and reach out to these legislative, your representatives. They are there to represent your concerns. If they don't know you're concerned about 5G, they're not going to do anything about it.
Absolutely. And keep on pressing on it, because I'll tell you, the telecommunications folks are talking to them on a regular basis. So if you're not talking with them, they're only hearing one side of the story. That's why I had that forum, because we were only getting one side of the story put out on and we had our 5G legislation going through the legislature at that time frame when we were holding that forum. So we're right now, the stage of the battle we're in is awareness, and just trying to expand awareness about what the risks are. I mean, people have known about these risks back to 1970s when the Navy did a lot of studies that showed some serious health impacts. And if you ever get on an Aegis destroyer or Aegis cruiser, you're going to find yourself in front of their phased array radars, and the nice little warning, which is using the same basic technology we're talking about here, a warning saying, don't stand in front of this. And there's a reason. All right. So, and also from a military technology perspective, this is up in the same spectrum that they use for an active denial system, which is a non-lethal crowd deterrent system that just essentially causes burning on people's skin. And so there are some concerns, and that kind of ties into the national security a little bit as well, because if somebody else got a hold of your network, why couldn't they go off and turn up the dial? So there's a lot of different concerns that are out there, and we don't want to be alarmist, but we want to make sure people are informed and aware of them. And so, but also highlight that there's a lot of practical steps we can take to go off and address it. And you hit on one of the key points, I think, which is where we are right now, which is advocacy and reaching out to your elected officials. I would submit it's not just the state or provincial elected officials that need to be aware of this, and it's not just the federal elected officials. I think a huge opportunity, and where we really need to concentrate a lot of effort, is at the local units of government. And what successes have you seen at the local level over the last few months or so that maybe give some promise, and more some areas of concern that we need to address?
Well, what we're starting to see, I can talk a little bit more about Canada, but I know that in the US there's a lot going on as well, is because the federal guidelines are so strict on what the local, we call it the local land use authority here. So that represents whether it's a town, a city, or municipality, or a region. Mm-hmm. So the local land use authority really can't do much other than if there's some cosmetic things, or if they've designated an area historical or heritage, then the telecommunication provider may have to work around that. But what we're seeing, and we've got up to a dozen now local municipalities that are passing a bylaw that asks the federal government to investigate these federal guidelines because they're concerned about them. Now, all they can do is ask, but you know, think how powerful that would be if you had some of the major cities and towns across North America formally asking FCC, Federal Communication Commission in the US, or Health Canada in Canada, to say, look, we are very concerned. We've seen enough evidence to show that we think there's harm. We can't, you've taken away all our power here locally, so we would like you to investigate these health effects. In Canada nor the US, has there ever been a proper review of the scientific evidence?
No.
That meets international standards. And that's where you go through there's a formal, rigorous process, and people have PhDs in this. And it has not been done by the Federal Communications Commission or Health Canada. They have not sat down, put scientists in the room, scrubbed all the information, gone through a set of assumptions, published those assumptions, done their weight of evidence analysis, which you're very familiar with, right, in your background. It's never been published. Senator, if you can believe, the weight of evidence analysis has never been published in North America that these guidelines are based on.
No, so, it reeks of politics, frankly, and there's a pushback. And I know how this works on the inside. And when you say, I think it was the 1996 Telecommunications Act in America that was passed that effectively indemnified telecommunication companies from adverse health impacts due to wireless technology. Yes. So there is no incentive for them to go off and highlight what's going on, as long as they stay within some artificially high constraints around that are defined by the FCC. Oh, by the way, the FCC is now in the business of defining what's healthy and what's not healthy. We thought it would be like the FDA or maybe CDC or somebody like that, or no, it's actually the FCC, because they've got all those medical doctors on staff at the FCC, right? Yes. So they're defining what these acceptable thresholds are. And the way a lot of legislation is written, and including the legislation that was passed in Michigan when I was a senator that I voted no on, very vocally no, is that all the legislation saying as long as they stay within the guidelines provided by the FCC, that you can't touch them. And so that's why there's a lot of pushback on these studies, because if they lead to revised studies, then all of a sudden the legal liability for adverse health impacts starts rearing its ugly head for them. And that's why you see these folks pushing back, because there's a lot of liability that's pent up, and they're willing to throw a lot of money to make sure that those studies never see the light of day. That's what we're up against.
There is actually one interesting or encouraging situation in the U.S. where the Environmental Health Trust and other organizations are actually suing the FCC.
Yes, I saw that.
Litigation forward. It's on the ehtrust.org website, but I think
that's Talkover and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are leading that. It's all these good folks that we're working with at that forum are not Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm glad he's popped on later. We didn't have him for our forum, but it's good to see the networks that are building around this. It's exciting. Josh Del Sol with 5G Summit too, that he's been pushing out. It's really good stuff that's happening on that front. Yes,
no, absolutely. I agree. So I think there's that. And then I think the second thing that people need to do, and as a business owner, you can do this, or as a homeowner, is encourage the use of fiber more and more.
Yeah.
You know, I know it costs a lot more money just putting a wireless router in to take care of security in a building or to take care of internet is it's conceivably a lot cheaper to begin with, but you have to upgrade those systems over time. So if you were building, we've been working with schools in North America. If you're building a new school or you're renovating a school, well, yeah. I see that would apply to a new building. We wrote a Smart and Healthy Buildings paper that was published back last summer. And we just encouraged industry to say, look, if you're building a new building, the cheapest time to wire it with internet wire is when you're running all the electrical wire. So yeah. Why wouldn't you do that? It is, and you mentioned the point before, security, I think, is going to become a significantly bigger issue as we move forward.
Yeah.
We know, and you know, you're aware of this as well. There are countries, these are no longer people sitting in their parents' basement. These are countries hiring the biggest and best brains they can find in the industry to go and hack other countries and other industries in those countries. And the more you put in a wireless environment, the more it's exposed to the waves, the airwaves, the more susceptible it is to attack. And so, you know, if you have a fiber system running through your business in your building, and it's fed by a fiber system into your building, and then it's either fiber, internet, Ethernet through your building, you can feel very, very good that that's a pretty secure environment. Yeah. And I would argue over the long term could be actually cheaper. We certainly know it's faster.
And we were just talking a little bit beforehand about, you know, one of my projects that I'm working on is protecting election integrity here in Michigan and across the country. And I know for a fact, some municipalities are using wireless technology to transmit election results through the stream. And you can hack a wireless network, even with encryption, I mean, within 30 seconds or less. I mean, this is not rocket scientists. So science stuff. I mean, so the idea of embedding in a fiber network is even more important in that context. It's really tough to go off and tap into a fiber line in particular. Yes. So anyway, that's good. So next 90 days, next couple of years, what do you see happening on the horizon that people can engage in and put their energies into and help out with expanding beyond just awareness promulgation into some serious steps that we can take to go off and mitigate some of these safety risks?
Well, I think, certainly, let me talk about the Canadian perspective and then the one in the US as well. In Canada, there are 40 organizations that are behind this 5G appeal. It's on on the C4C website, the pointer to it. It's 5G appeal 5G. So there's a French and the English version of that's the appeal. But if you go to c4c.org and see 5G, you can actually go and sign the appeal. So what we decided as these 40 organizations to say, this is one input, one action, and we want to reach out and get the government to really halt 5G until some of these issues are resolved. Yeah. In the U.S., there are some organizations. There's a grassroots info organization. There's some 5G groups. What I would do is in the U.S. is I would start the Environmental Health Trust because they're current on what's going on. If there's anything going on in your state, I would look at that. The Grassroots Information Organization. There's a brain cancer organization in California. I would just Google 5G awareness locally and just reach out. And if you can't find anybody, then you mentioned Josh's organization. He's got people across North America that are signing up. So get in. It's gonna take a little bit of time. There isn't an overall U.S. organization. It's just such a big
grassroots country,
right. There's so many people. It's just
the key is to join one of these groups and get engaged and become aware, and then you become the information source for your friends and family and network it out. That's the only way, we're going to be able to really do this systematically. So that's good. I mean, so there's a lot happening. We got lawsuits pending to go off and stop and force them to do an examination of this. We've got a lot of these grassroots communities that are starting to pop up all over the place to go off and address it. We've got some action at the federal level over here because of some of those lawsuits, at least a recognition around the national security risks associated with 5G. So we still got our work cut out for us. So it's very, I think I went through the 5 stages of awareness that you had to go through. First of all, it was denial. Then when you find out that what's really happening, you get angry, and then you start bargaining and say, okay, well, fine. If you just stop the halt for a little bit, get the study out there, and then we'll see what we can do forward. And then exasperation, essentially, as you get frustrated that nobody's actually going off and doing it. But then ultimately, I think we win because the truth is on the side here, and the studies are irrefutable. It's just a matter of getting that truth out. And I want to thank you very much for everything that you do. You're a tireless advocate on this topic. It's I really appreciate it because you provide this rational, sane approach to going off and addressing this problem that sometimes when you get stuck in that stage 2 and you're just really mad at what you're seeing out there, you can't move into any of the other stages that get us to that stage 5. And you've demonstrated that you've kept your keel all the way through. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of my family as well for everything you've done on that.
Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. It's a journey. It's and we're encouraged because there's more and more people now are aware. Inherently, when you hold this phone to your head, it's not good.
Yeah.
Well, now people are understanding that, and they don't know what to do. So the first thing is stop doing that. Put it on speaker mode. Use earbuds or earbuds, and not the wireless one. Use wired.
Yes.
To
I know it looks cooler to have those little earrings coming out of your ears, but that's bad.
Yeah, when I'm on Zoom or Skype calls with people and they have those earbuds in, I ask them not to use them.
Yeah.
And then it turns into an education session. So people just don't know. But people
here's
want
my full geek mode. So
that's the best way for sure. Yeah. And I think people are more aware. They're more concerned as we're using the technology more. There are people that understand that the risks are higher. And so I think as we continue to raise this awareness, and I think more people are going to take action. That's really, what my only message is: say, do something.
Yeah.
Right. Go and get educated, talk to your family members, protect your family, and then go out and reach out. You'll be surprised if you reach out and talk to 2 people, you will be surprised how receptive they are. I'm blown away all the time now. People say, I kind of didn't think that was the right thing to do, but I didn't know what to do about it. So now we educate.
And I think the best way I found to engage people on it, go read those legal agreements on your phone.
Yes.
If you want to think that this is fake, this is not something, go read it. You're carrying it around, you hit accept on it. So there, start right there, because that's something that it's really kind of symptomatic of everything we're talking about. The truth is out there. It's buried in the fine print, and a lot of people don't want to go off and pop up and see it, but you're doing a great job of bringing that fine print and distilling that up to the top so people can't deny it anymore. And I want to say thank you again for everything you've done on this. And hopefully everybody's got an understanding why Frank's an honorary rocket scientist. And if you can follow him out at ehtrust.org and also c4st.org. That's environmentalhealthtrust.org, and also Canadians for Safe Technology organizations. Please go there to get started down this road. I'm going to provide some links to some other data, including the forum that we did back in 2018. And you guys can see some of the testimonies that were provided there, because I think they're pretty startling. And I just wish more legislators would be woken up to the risks that are happening. But this is step 1 towards that, is getting that awareness out there. So thank you again, Frank. God bless you and your family, and thanks for getting the word out.
And thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thanks.